Conversations with Elders, hosted by yours truly, Louis-Virie Blanche, welcoming you to Glastonbury Radio 432, where we will be TED Talking in tongues with the elders of all ages, all generations, all races, cultures, and creeds. All gender, religious, or political preferences will be honored and encouraged on Glastonbury Radio 432, Conversations with Elders, where it is our treasured pleasure to roll out the red carpet of golden liquid love light to you in honor of the Queendom Come, soul dancing free to life's heartbeat drum, in honor of mother, daughter, sister, lover, priestess, goddess, friend, sharing the blessings of love's perfect stranger, Deja Vu, welcoming you to Glastonbury Radio 432.
It's too cosmic, much too cosmic for me. Much too cosmic.
Aloha, hola, aho, hello. We are going to roll out the red carpet of golden liquid love light with our Phi brother, Dr. Mosen.
Oh, thank you. Hi, how are you?
Aloha, hola, aho, hello. Good to be with you again.
It's very cold here.
Yes, there's a lot of that going around.
Yeah. It's global cooling.
1 minute it's springtime, the next minute it's winter.
Yeah. So let's see, can you see my screen?
I can.
Okay.
And I just wanted to say, our subject will be omnitecture. So please explain that title, omnitecture.
Well, basically, architecture means collective organization, composite organization. The word architecture is not just building, it's basically collective and composite orders, composite organization. So therefore, when we bring the composite or collective details of, let's say, a bedroom and this and that, we put it together, it becomes process of architecture.
Mm-hmm.
So architecture means the process of bringing different components, collective and composite orders. Is that clear or?
Yes, that's perfect. Yes.
Yeah, okay. So therefore, everything in creation is pleomorphic. That means continuously morph. For example, as we are in the mother's womb, or in the sperm of a father, it morphs to a baby in the womb. We talked about that last time. And then it morphs to another environment, which is this. And then, when we die, dying is not end, it's basically transition.
Oh.
We morph to the first level of heaven. And first level of heaven, which is out of 7, this first level is basically, it's in order of time and space. That's why we can see galaxies and the Milky Ways and all that, in time and space. Now, the other part of the creation, which is beyond the first level of heaven, is beyond time and space. So therefore, we cannot perceive it.
So therefore, in our humanness, we are dealing with time and space.
Yes, everything human, in this creation of the first heaven, everything is a function of time and space, a domain of time and space. So we can only perceive anything in time and space. Now, when it comes to a spirit, the spirit does not have a domain. It's the will of God, because God is not part of a domain. He's creator of the domain. He can be part of the domain. Creator is not of his own creation. So therefore, nobody can define a spirit. So therefore, a spirit is out of, human perception and cognition too. So therefore, everything in this time and space, based on attributes of time and based on attributes of space, is constantly morphing. You see everything in the Milky Ways and the stars continuously morphing around each other. And no entity in creation repeats itself in time and space twice. That's why we came with the anatomy of motion, which was rotation, vortation, and peristalsis. That means Earth never repeats its position in time and space twice, or no other planets. And it's not just the Earth that goes around the sun, but sun also goes around the Earth, because sun at the same time is going through rotation, and peristalsis. All anatomy of motion is rotation, and peristalsis.
So when it comes to as well as we can imagine spirit,
Yes.
we're basically going into a non-linear perception, which with our imagination, we can't really touch that essence.
Yeah. Even our imagination and visualization is always in time and space. We cannot get out of the domain of time and space. So therefore, the spirit is only exclusive to Creator, to God. So we cannot make a process, procedure, and practice out of it and call it a spiritualism. We can do that with soul, but not with the spirit. Now, but we know, but the only thing we can point out toward the spirit is the will of God in existentialism.
The will of God in existentialism.
Yes. Now,
we are the expressions of the will of God, are we not?
We are, it's true, but what happened, nobody knows what the spirit is. We cannot define the spirit, so because it's not in the domain of time and space.
So how do we try to define ourselves or get a better understanding of who we are?
Okay, what happens, we are a composite and collective congelation and coagulation. That's why from a spirit, which is the will of God, my will and yours is within our soul. It's the mind of our soul. But the spirit is the will of God. So when he wills in any kind of creation, that is spirit, his will, polymorphs and coagulate and congeals to lower order. And that lower order within the first heaven is called synergy. That's why we can see the impact of the synergy. We cannot create synergy, but we see the product of the synergy. For example, carbon, nitrogen, oxygen, air, water, the will of a seed, when it divides itself and multiplies, all of that, it becomes composite and collective by increasing order, entropy, and it becomes an apple. So therefore, synergy, when it comes to a lower order and lower boundary, it becomes matter. I mean, before you couldn't see synergy, sunlight and all that exists, no magneticity and all that exists. But when it comes together by the law of entropy, that means ever increasing order, it becomes an apple. Now, with my faculty, I can see the apple, or I can taste it, or I can eat it, or whatever. Mm-hmm. So, this will of God congeals and coagulates to synergy. And synergy, by the law of entropy and sufficiency, it coagulates and congeals to a lower order, and it becomes the matter, which is the apple.
So when you have the spirit, soul, mind, field, heart, flow, brain, pulse, and body, are those levels congealing?
Yeah, it's by the spirit and synergy is that, but we are a composite matter, but this matter has emotion, heart, mind, and soul. Those faculties we talked about. So the matter goes through evolution. That means, something in time. It was creation. There is no evolution without creation, and no creation without evolution. Those are composite with each other, part of each other. So we can't just, I believe in evolution, or I only believe in creation, because this apple, it goes through an evolution. That means a process in time and space. So if you eat it, if it's on the ground, it rottens, and then that matters when it has gone through its lifespan, the span of my life or yours, or a span of lifespan of an apple. That apple disintegrates again, and it goes to what?
That apple as a gift of spirit.
Yeah. it disintegrates again, and it goes back to synergy. That's why that synergy is, let's say, if it rottens in the soil and all that, becomes synergy of the soil.
It reassimilates itself.
Yeah. So that is called, that's why, the matter either goes through synergy and it goes back to its spirit again. So that's the orbit of creation. We come from a spirit, it coagulates, congeals to synergy, synergy to matter, matter lives a lifespan, then it goes back to synergy and back to God. So we come from God and we return to God.
So there's a congealing that happens at each of these stages.
It's a synergetic and centropical coagulation and congelation and centropical decoagulation.
The pulse is what that's creating. The pulse is you're describing pulse, right?
Yeah. So what happened? The matter decongeals and decoagulate again back to synergy. That's why it goes back to soil has this synergy. You see that? So if you look at this order, it goes from, this is the anatomy of creation. A spirit goes to synergy, synergy to matter, matter lives a lifespan, and the matter goes back to synergy. And all of this is a centropical order and sufficiency, and back to a spirit, back to God. We come from God and we go back to God. That's what the death is.
It's a process of constant creation.
Yeah, it's the orbit of creation, anatomy of creation.
The orbit of creation, the anatomy of creation.
Yeah. So now, if you look at, I can't create synergy. It's only creation of God. I cannot change matter to synergy either. That's again process of anatomy of nature. Because if I follow that surrender, submission, and service to creator and creation in peace and joy, then I'm in that orbit. However, I rebelled. Here comes the story of my rebellious.
I'm going to edge God out.
Now, the story of my rebellious is, I thought I was smarter than nature.
Ego.
So I came and I took the matter and I said, well, energy is very similar to synergy. I go from matter to energy, wood, gas, oil, you see that?
Mm-hmm.
And that's the process of materism and materialism. So I created the science of economy. I created the science of modern science of Renaissance, that's why it was a sunset in humanity, because all of a sudden, due to rebellious, I created a new process, procedure, and practice away from orbit of creation. I created a scientific orbit.
Your process, procedure, and practice has become totally entropic.
Yes. So this, if you notice, every scientist, in every science they teach it, even in colleges, in thermodynamic, this matter to energy is one-way system. It's a closed system. It has no orbit. It has no orbit. It's just a one-way. That's why entropy is irreversible. Materism, which is as the process, and then materialism or economy based on this materism, is ever increasing debt. You notice every country who has national debt continuously increases. It doesn't go down because of GNP. Every year has to go that many percentage higher. So that's all of a sudden you notice, you see the whole picture of creation and the picture of man's rebellious invention. So matter by mechanical path, matter to energy, I have created a process and all kind of invention and science, technology to go from wood or from the oil, from the gas or from nuclear to what? To energy. That's all my energy is created that. That's why we can make a synergy is a God's process. Energy is my process. I'm going to sell it to you if you watch my TV program.
I'm going to cultivate my desire.
Yeah.
Then cultivate it. I'm so delighted. I'm delighted.
Just listen to my ads 7 times. You'll be convinced.
So where does this phrase mind over matter come from in this way of thinking of things?
Okay, mind, you notice mind over matter, if it's matter or emotion over mind, let's say. Emotion over mind, and matter is a little lower than emotion. And if my emotion, let's say you convince me with your ad emotionally to buy this product, any process of emotion overriding the mind is the process, procedure, and practice of temptation.
Oh.
And who tempts people? Satan. The source of Satan, temptation is Satan. That's why you notice, for example, Adam and Eve. It was the jinn, the Iblis, which they refer to as Satan, convinced them, they were ordered not to eat out of this tree. When they were tempted to do it, they were sad automatically. That's autonomic creational function.
So this fallen angel, could that fallen angel find redemption?
The fallen angel is actually the angels. There is no such a thing as fallen angels, because all angels is absolutely, they don't have a determinism. They are all indeterminate. That means they're absolutely obedient to God.
They're
However,
absolutely angelic.
yeah, there is no fallen angel. So the fallen angel they refer to, it's Iblis. Iblis was one of the jinns which didn't bow to Adam, because God asked him, when he refused to do that, he became Iblis. Iblis means, a fallen jinn, not fallen angel.
And explain jinn. Jinn, some people know of this, but it needs some explanation. Jinn, the jinn aspect.
Jinn are beings which they are not within our perceptive and cognitive recognition. That means they don't have a physical body like us. Their order of existence is totally beyond our space and time. There are different, the spectrum of time and space.
Are they ethereal?
They are what?
Ethereal.
Imperial.
Ethereal, like, are they composed of ether? Are they entities composed?
Well, they are entities, they are entities subject to time and space. But if you look at, let's say, any of our faculties, there is a boundary of our faculties to see, boundary of faculty to hear. So they are not within our spectrum, boundary of our spectrum. There is many creation in the universe that they are not within our boundary of perception and cognition. We can see the trees, you can see the animals and stars and all that, because they are within the boundary of my visual faculty, my hearing faculty. They all have a little band, you remember? There's like, for example, you cannot hear the sound of sharks, but their sound, ours is about 20,000 maximum, 20 few thousand. Sharks are about 200,000. So therefore, it's not within the spectrum of hearing, so we can hear the sharks. But if they activate and fluctuate it down and down and down, and then you can hear it. The trees.
So, is that how a jinn would become cognitive to a human perception?
Well, they can become, jinns are beyond our boundary of perceptive faculties. So
how
therefore,
do we come to know of them?
Huh?
How do we come to know of them?
Well, because they by resonation. So for example, if I'm a very temptational person, that means my emotion always overrides my mind. I'm in a state of temptation. Those jinns like us, they're in a state of temptation, they resonate with me, so they affect me.
So it's a sympathetic resonance.
Yeah, but if it's mind over emotion or emotion over matter, then there are good jinns, just like human. Then you resonate with them so they can enhance you. For example, if you look at T.J. Arnaud, the very French mystic in 1800, when he recognized that, he found out, so good jinns, they come and help human on earth. For example, Prophet Solomon, Prophet David, they both were helped with good gens, and they could communicate to it because they can resonate with them. So there are other prophets, for example, Abraham, when Nimrod, which was the king of that time, at his time, they put a bonfire to burn him, right?
Mm-hmm.
They put him in the bonfire to burn him, biggest bonfire. All the people around the area, they gathered to watch him burn because he was preaching the unity of God. So when that happens, the jinns came to his help. And all of a sudden, the fire lost its attribute to be burning. And it was cool fire. And they all got scared and they ran away. And Prophet Abraham was saved. You see, that's what happens, when you have a resonance with good gen, that means you are in surrender, submission, and service to Creator and creation in peace and joy. You are resonating with good gens. If I'm rebellious in materialism, I'm resonating with the bad gens.
Well, some of this can kind of get into, some people use the word possession, or they like for a building or a structure, if a structure has a lot of jinn activity.
Yes.
Are there ways to clear that resonance?
Yes, because I am the source of it. I am the one. It's just like host theory, like I invite all the germ into my body by being the environment that they can replicate. Now, if you blow that into a macro level, a bigger level, a bigger scale, 5 scale, then all of a sudden I could be hosting the gens. I could be hosting living things, which is just like hosting a germ. I could be hosting the gens. Germs and gens. You just think about host theory. Avicenna talked about this 1,000 years ago. So I can be hosting these that we call they are possessed. That means I was a host to these rebellious gens, just like rebellious people.
So do we have a responsibility to cultivate our souls, our minds, and our hearts?
Yes, when we do that, when we are in the position of surrender, submission, and service to Creator, creation, and peace and joy, and then I'm resonating with good ones. So I'm hosting good germs in my body, good living organism, outside my body. So
the
it's
good bacteria.
Macro to macro. So that's why I said earlier, finite and infinite. When you want it to be in surrender, submission, and service, you get in this state here. Finite and infinite without end.
Is there a mathematical equation for finite and infinite?
Thank you. No.
Can't find that in the laboratory?
No, because all of a sudden the bad germs comes and burn the laboratory. So they get macro and micro. You look at everything in micro to macro within our perception and cognition without end. No matter how much you go this way or that way, there is no end to our perception. Now, also within and without. When you love something in pure way, in sultrular way, not cellular, but cellular, then you don't see any end within with love or end without love. So there is no end. So end is not part of our perception.
Now, does it also lead us to know that there's no beginning?
There is no beginning, there is no end. Only the beginning and end is only known to God. No beginning, no end is ever known to any creation.
So why is it humans are very hungry to have a no time or a space-free experience? People yearn for these non-linear experiences. They do a lot of different things to find this way of going into a non-linear state of mind.
Well, the only a state of mind if they can go out of time and space, and we can't, because we are byproduct of time and space. Our thinking, our functions, everything is in time and space. We are creation of time and space. Only one that has no time and space, no beginning, no end, is God, because he's not end and beginning is a function of time.
So to get into that realm where we understand that the here and nowness of this one eternal moment,
yeah,
is all we're dealing, that's all we have to work with.
Yeah, but the thing is, the beginning of end of everything is known to God. Human cannot, because there is no end to a space. There is no end to time.
We just can't wrap our mind around it.
Yeah. So therefore, there are certain things which is not in domain of our thoughts. That means, for example, if I say second or third or fourth or fifth heaven, it's not known to us, only is known to God. Everything in domain of time and space can be perceived by us.
So are there experiences beyond the domain of our physical senses? Beyond the domain of the brain, beyond the domain of the mind. I mean, there are these, beyond that domain, those time and space domains, we can't venture beyond that.
We can't, but what happened, we can go higher and higher. You go from physical to heart. You go from heart to mind. You go from mind to soul. So therefore, it's always what? Expansion, and also what? Progression.
And that's as close as we can get to spirit.
Yeah. Because a spirit is that essence of God to give us ability to do that. That's why there is no such a thing as spiritualism, is soultualism, because a spirit cannot be perceived. No, only God knows what the spirit is.
Soultual.
Yeah, soultuality.
Soultuality.
Soultually yours. Now, back to the chart here. So since I couldn't do the orbit of God, and I didn't want to get in a state of surrender, submission, and service in peace with joy. So I had to come up with a new way to convince myself. So I started using matter to energy. So I went with the concept of energy.
You create some fire and you think you can scare everybody with it.
Yeah. And then, I went I progressed in my matterism. I started excavating oil, and I thought it was a little more, I can burn it faster. And then from there, I went to gas, I went to coal, then I thought I was really smart, and I went to nuclear, and then destroyed. I mean, when you really destroy the nucleus of an atom, you cannot recover it. That's why the scientist says, the half-life of that is 500 years. So I create that entropy. The byproduct is accumulative and entropy is not reversible. So this matter to energy, which started, with 15th, 16th century, and all of a sudden, we called it progress in Renaissance and Industrial Revolution. As Victor Hugo said, it was a sunset in humanity. That everything, technology, science, everything becomes matter and energy. And then all of a sudden, since I really centralized this and I got everybody working for me, I wanted to increase the velocity of that production. So I increased, notice computer, everything constantly got faster and faster. Now, faster I go, behind there I am.
Faster you go, the slower you go.
Behind, look at, space and time, since they have gone through the process of entropy. I don't have enough time as I used to do maybe 1 generation ago. I don't have enough space as 1 generation ago and generation before that. Well, I mean, I have let's say 5 car, 3, 4, 5 car garage. I still have no room, to park my car because my garage has become the junkyard of the family.
You've collected all your cultivated desires.
Yeah. So this is the issue of matterism, matter to energy. Me. I be mine. That's
I mean mine.
Yeah. So Matter to energy is the process of entropy, and that process, it has what we call economy. It means what? Numerication, quantification of ecosystem, not qualification. Ecology is the logic of ecosystem. Economy is quantification of ecosystem. That means I create more number and number and number, and if I'm centralizing it, you all be working for me, and I have more money than ever before. And I don't know what to do with it.
You become the central bank.
Yeah, so that becomes materialism. So this is what happened during Renaissance. That's why I put it with the dash line, since we didn't do surrender, submission, and service, and we created this, which was called Industrial Revolution. It was industrial devolution.
That's right. So the idea of when we do this to our bodies, we start accumulating to the point where we start noticing we might need to make a change.
Yes.
And one of the things that humans do is they fast.
Yes.
They go through a fast. Now, how do we put nature on a fast? How do we do that for all aspects of our lives? We can have a fast, and that helps to clean out the toxins, hopefully, right?
Yes. When we fast, what do? Let's say if you want to synchronize it with earth magnetism, which water are obedient to magneticity. At dawn, they go down. At the sunset, nightfall, they go up. They're totally obedient. So I have to be obedient if I'm fasting between dawn to nightfall. Therefore, other organisms, they have a different boundary than me and you. So some of them, within 5 to 6, they have to eat around the clock, sometimes 2, 3 hours, 4 hours. That's why when we get into this habit of dog food or fast food and all that stuff, we're constantly eating because we are feeding those organisms. Now, those organisms, all of a sudden, you're not eating within 12 hours, 15, 16 hours. They go to really massive starvation, and they cannot coexist more than 5, 6 hours. So the fasting gets rid of it. Or it actually implies that they should move out of the body because you are not hosting them. I'm not putting that donut and cream puff and all that stuff around in my body.
So how do we put the activities we've been doing to Mother Nature on a fasting system?
Well, then, let's say, in fasting system, all these stuff that we are putting into environment, it has to stop. Entropy I'm putting into environment. So when we are fasting in terms of global system, that means what? It means, that we are getting rid of entropy. Fasting is entropy. Is slowing and getting rid of entropy. Entropy, when I get ill, it means what? Increasing disorder. When I get healed, it means increasing order. So if I'm increasing order in the living environment, the nature goes back to health. Just like my body, when I go to increase order and eliminate disorder, entropy in it, it becomes healthier, just like fasting is.
So how will the average person notice these accumulations going on in our bodies? Your body gives you some pain, and it's a signal. But in the earth and in nature around us, we have to begin to take empirical or observation of what's happening.
Yeah, I mean, the thing is, the fact, that all the big cities, there's so much pollution in our water, in our food, in everything. In order for me to get the food, even if it's not GMO, if it's not and it's organic, I have to do some process to get it to you within a week on the grocery shop. So let's say fasting, if I put fasting is how we deal with entropy, is eliminating entropy in our body or environment. That fasting is eliminating or minimizing entropy and increasing centropy, whether if it's my body and yours or your microorganism or the entire environment, global environment. So fasting is how we handle entropy. It's getting the minimization and reduction of entropy. We're getting rid of it.
So is that same practice, procedure, and what are the three again? Practice, procedure, and
Process, procedure, and practice.
process, procedure, and practice. So we follow process, procedure, and practice and fasting to cleanse our bodies. We have a practice, procedure, and practice to fast for nature to go through. Now, what about our minds? What about the toxic thoughts that we might be carrying in our mental state?
The same thing, you know, let's say, and when the order of my mind goes up, it's entropy healing. When it goes down, it's entropy. So let's say I have negative emotion like jealousy, I have greed, I have hate, I have segregation, I have this, all these negative emotion that they have cultivated in me as education and culture. So when I fast my mind, I get rid of those.
Well, you know, when you mention hate, it makes me think of Dr. Emoto, because just those four letters, H-A-T-E or L-O-V-E, when you write those words and put them so they resonate into the water, it has an effect.
Instantly. So do I want to be like the water? Yes. What is the water doing? It's obedient to magneticity of the earth. And
we're about 80% water.
Yeah.
And the earth is the same way.
Yeah. You see what happens, you know, we are a microcausation of earth. We are a micro scale of the earth. Everything in the earth is in us.
So this fasting process to reactivate the assimilation.
Yeah, it's basically, fasting is a practice that we get rid of things which was not meant to be in the body, because we accumulated a lot of that.
And you mentioned from dawn until sunset. We
have to be in same synchronicity as water is to magneticity of the earth. I mean, simple as that. All we have to do, look at what happens to the water.
Just look at the tides.
Yeah. I mean, what happens, you know, instantly, as you said, Dr. Emoto showed that instantly the water responds to this letter of love, whichever language you put on it. It doesn't matter what language. The water is smart. It knows, you know, what it means. No matter what language you put it on, Chinese or Japanese or Russian, Arabic, you know.
The water is harvesting the vibration, isn't it?
Yeah, yeah. Because it knows the intention. So this water is very intelligent. So why don't we at least follow the water?
Well, there's a saying that's become more and more popular: water is life.
Yeah, yeah. If you notice, now you look at all the polymorphism, diversity, motion, everything the water goes. You don't boil the ocean to get the clouds, do you? Otherwise it would all burn. And then, you know, it goes up, sometimes coagulates and congeals, and sometimes decoagulate, decongeals.
It's going through that pulse. It's going through the phases.
And it goes, you know, through polymorphism. There's a saying, you know, if you want to see it, say it at the very end, see how the clouds spontaneously and divergently change their patterns. And if you could do that with our lives.
Oh. I want to become a cloud, like a form of clouds. I'm form and I'm formless whenever I choose.
Yeah. You know, and you notice it happens to Milky Way. You know, some nights, you know, you see the light of the same thing that happens to the water. The same thing happens with the lights of the Milky Way, because they go to peristalsis, rotation. So there is no two scene that you look at the star is the same as you ever have seen it before. That's why it's uniqueness of creation. And then you bow to God and go, oh my God, the creator of all this thing. And here I think I'm better, I know better, and I created matter to energy, entropy, and materialism and materism. And I deceive people by imitation, by cultivation, to really follow me.
So this practice, the practices that create this an alkalinity in water really reverts to from micro to macro. It's the same, follows the same function.
Yeah, yeah. It just basically, it's the unified field function that was created by Creator. And that's the function of synergy. Synergy means what? Unification, coming together. An apple, all these components unify to become an apple.
And diversity creates the longing for unity.
Yeah. Well, I mean, let's say an apple, because this is very easy to perceive. Let's say an apple. It has carbon, hydrogen, nitrogen, and then it has water, and then all these kind. When nature composes this, is produces protein or carbohydrates or fat or this and that, vitamins and all that. But what happens if only apple was nitrogen? It didn't have diversity. What would happen? We wouldn't have it. You wouldn't have an apple. It has to have diversity to come together to become an apple. So let's say you're only missing one or two components of that apple. That means diversity was not complete. It wasn't full spectrum. Then you still wouldn't have an apple. You wouldn't have a grape. You wouldn't have a this. There wouldn't be any me or you.
We have to be thankful for our diversity.
Oh yeah, I mean, creation could not function without diversity. Nothing would compose and become collective, and unity would not be achieved. And then that means the whole creation was in chaos.
And chaos is anticoagulation.
Yes. So, but if I am in this part of the things which I put it in red, matter to energy, I become very exclusive. I only would go, I'm not a diversity of composition and collective of nature, integration, symbiotics, energy, centropical, and all that. So what happened? I become very exclusive. I use only oil. I use only gas and or nuclear. But if you look at, it's not which one is going to end, the availability of those sources or ability of Earth to absorb those byproduct or entropy. Which one's going to run out? It gets to a point that either Earth cannot absorb any more entropy to the threshold, or those resources are going to run out. So which one comes first?
That's the question.
Is it the ability to Earth to absorb those entropies to the level of its threshold, or availability of those resources, which is very limited? As it becomes more limited, the price will go up.
That's supply versus demand.
Yeah. Well, that's what economists, so this, you notice now this whole presentation goes to this issue. Who created this right side of the chart that you see here, this omnimorphism? There were 9 people who were doing this. They realized that they could not model a spirit. You can put a spirit in a formula, or you cannot find a process, procedure, and practice of the spirit. So they said, okay, we put the spirit out. So the only were left, with this, it says scientific orbits. You remember this box here? Mm-hmm. Scientific orbit. All of a sudden, they realized they didn't have access to synergy to go to matter to create an apple. So what happened? All of a sudden, scientific orbit, it becomes a mechanical path. There was no orbit.
Not a biological path.
Yeah? So all of a sudden, they didn't have synergy to matter. So the only thing where they're limited with is matter to energy. So that was the science of Renaissance, Newtonian paradigm or Vedic paradigm, or industrial revolution. That's why this is what is humanity is faced with a global critical point.
Yeah, the book Critical Path, one of Bucky's last books. Well, it came out in the 70s.
Yes.
The understanding just to see people that had the vision, like to look into the future and predict certain consequences from our choices.
Yeah.
And we are now in a way saying the dominance of entropic activity is causing such accumulation that we are being forced to take a fast.
Yeah. Since before I forget, since you mentioned that, it was after he was 72 years old that he gave up geodesic dome and all that stuff, because a first grader changed his paradigm. And he wrote this book. Have you seen this?
Oh yes, synergetics. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Because he realized energy and circles and pi and all that doesn't work.
Well, synergetics 1 and 2, right?
Yeah.
Well, that was one of the principles that, see if I can find it here. In his last book, Grunts Are Giants, the understanding of the material in synergetics 1 and 2 was one of the crucial things that he felt humanity needed to embrace.
Yeah.
So why is that synergetics so important?
Because we are at the threshold of entropical, we are at a point of entropical threshold that we cannot keep going with entropical procedure that these 9 people during Renaissance and Industrial Revolution created.
So we're reaching the point of no return.
Well, because what happened is that the ability of Earth to absorb more pollution, or the ability of Earth to produce more energetic resources. Our resources are going down, and our cities are saturated, our food, our earth, everything is saturated with what? Chemical and toxin. You saw that Eustace Mullen, that I sent you his video. That was done in early 90s, in 1990 something.
Yes, I wasn't able to look at that completely. Give us a little summary of what the message is there.
The message is there, that's what we are seeing on the right side of this, because everything I do, it's the bottom line. So I am selling to you bottom line. For example, if there is no money in health practices, it's health care. You learn how to care for yourself. Nobody's closer to you than you are to yourself, and nobody's closer to you than God to you than even yourself. So, but if you are going by my pill, so I'm going to promote that pill, and I constantly have negative emotion. Negative emotion, which is bad for me, and I wish that you have more and more headache more often.
Please get sick more often. I can make more profit.
Yeah. You see, Eustace Nolan message is that when you
I would like to
movie,
make something that doesn't last very long, so you need to buy a new one even quicker.
Well, any materialistic economy, whether if it's capitalism or communism, you need to find ways to increase your profits.
When the bottom line is the profit margin, you got to focus on that.
And forget about every other line, just the bottom line.
What happens to integrity?
Forget it. It's entropy here. If I have to make, you hired me as the president of your company, I have to make sure that entropy is sustainable to have that bottom line. So at the end of the line, as the CEO of this company, be happy with my presidency and give me a bonus if I increase their profit.
So if I want you to help me cultivate desire, you've got to be really good at cultivating desire that helps me expand my profit margin.
Exactly. I have to find every creative way to increase the entropy.
And if you own the media, you want to maybe control all that gets advertised on those media outlets.
Yeah, that's why I had that other slides. You notice, if you
The
look at
pyramid,
this,
yes.
ideology is anatomy of creation. Now, philosophy is anatomy of my thinking, but my ideology is anatomy of creation, the spirit, synergy, and matter. Now, at the very top of this, you notice is media. Because whether it has been religion over the centuries or maybe even, you know, currently in our environment, is the media that tells you the story.
Television tells you what to see.
Yeah. Television that tells you what your vision should be. I tell you what your vision should be. And if I'm a good producer, I know how to artistically cultivate this telling you what your vision is. Forget about if you know what your vision is. You have to listen to me because I'm telling you what your vision should be.
I have a hard time thinking for myself. Would you please do it for me?
Yeah. But if I cannot cultivate that properly, they fire me and another show will take a better rating.
So if I have a yearning for unity and I don't understand spirit, I may need you to help me figure it all out.
Yeah. So television, I tell you what your vision should be. So anyway, let me see. So there we go. So we are talking about naturopedia, not encyclopedia, but naturepedia. What's in encyclopedia is fine. It's my saying, your saying, his and hers and all that. It's collective of the opinion, which is philosophy. Naturepedia is ideology, is what the nature is telling us. So you want to, so that's your choice.
And that becomes empirically obvious.
Yes. And I think, you know, we went through this, you know, last time. So now the nature of the order of these components, we have a spirit, which not perceivable by us, and however, revelation and inspiration through our soul, it comes from the spirit. The source of all things are who? Is the source of all things are God. It's nothing from me. So it becomes just like this now. On my own, I am nobody. Okay? Through God, I become somebody. Okay? Now, that some is the blessing. When spirit, that some, if I become somebody, that some is the blessing. And that blessing comes to what? Through what? The way to get it? Surrender, submission, and service to Creator and creation in peace and joy.
Oh.
So otherwise, I'm nobody. There's nothing belongs to me. And if I become somebody, that some comes from only Creator, because that's the only source. So how do I get that some, that blessing? Surrender, submission, and service in Creator and creation. So therefore, you know, I have to know that I don't own anything. Everything is, if I am good field, God bless me to pass things through me.
So what did Rumi say about leasing and renting our bodies? What was it?
Well, I mean, that means, you know, leasing our body or mind or any of that, you know, it's not kosher.
We're only borrowing these things. It's not ours.
Yeah, it's a rental property for our soul to go through. So that's why a spirit uses our soul as a field to pass all the good stuff. But if I really become rebellious to the spirit, like that chart that I showed you before. Then my soul goes to my subconscious rather than conscious. So we get right side of that. And through the mind, and then through the soul comes to the mind. From the mind, it develops the field for the heart to function. And from the heart, we have the flow. And that flow, it affects from the heart, it creates pulse in the brain. And that pulse in the brain, autonomic nervous system, controls the body.
So you've shown how the spirit to soul to mind to feel to heart to flow to brain to pulse and body is all a system of pulsations, really.
It's the whole example before my eyes and your eyes, everybody's eye, a complete creation in diversity, which is innate longing for unity, to be one. For me to be somebody. Otherwise, I'm nobody.
There's a yearning to be nobody, to have no name,
Well,
no status, no material wealth, just to be a simple nobody.
Yeah.
But
And
the Beatles said a
somebody-
real nowhere man.
Where do you get that some blessing? By surrender, submission, and service. You see that? How it's connected? Yeah.
Yes.
Otherwise, I get nothing. I won't get any blessing. I get provision to survive, but I don't have any blessing. There's a difference between blessing and provision. God, out of his mercy, has provided for all beings, whether they're rebellious or submissive. But if you're surrender, submission, and service, you get blessing. That means, something little, all of a sudden it expands, fractalates to a lot, and fills your emotion, fills your soul, fills your heart, fills your brain, and fills your body. Even I may be a poor person.
And by the magnetism of resonance, you're attracting that to yourself.
Yes. That's why earlier we were talking. If I'm in that state, then I resonate with the real resonating jinns, and they come like Prophet David and or Solomon. Build your castle, build your palace, and all of a sudden they go and get the Queen of Sheba to come and marry you.
And you probably got a composite revelation on all of this.
Yeah. And all of a sudden, the nature, fire goes through polymorphism, and it won't burn. It won't burn Abraham. All along the history, fire was burning, and all of a sudden, it becomes cooling, and people get so scared and run away.
Well, if we can't put an equation into place to define God and spirit, we can't define finite or infinite with an equation, we may want to go back to the drawing board and see what nature had in mind from the very beginning, without beginning or end.
Yes.
Honor those empirical observations.
Exactly. Yes.
And keep ourselves in a place where we're not overly accumulating and getting so self-centered, it's I, me, mine, to the point where we've caused ourselves really it's like a slow suicide, is it not?
Yes, it's a gradual suicide. Now, for example, as you said, if I become self-centered, that means I have no peristalsis, everything constantly contracting toward the center. The pressure around the center becomes so much until I blow up. But if I have peristalsis, everything moves. Let's say, if you have centrism in one of your blood vessels, all of a sudden it accumulates and that blood vessels busts. Would the heart have a heart attack? But if you have proper peristalsis, contraction, expansion, contraction, and expansion, all the anatomy of motion created by God, then we are healthy. Everything flows.
Well, in that field and flow, let's leave this conversation with a repeat of what omnitecture is?
Omnism, it means, omni means it's only exclusive to God, like we call him omni-justice. Omni means something independent from time and space, because time and space is the domain we can think and perceive things. And God created that, so he's not part of that. That's why a spirit is not. So omnism means a position of God and will of God in something we are beyond domain of time and space. So architecture, the word architecture means collective and composite organism in a centropical way. All of our architecture has become very entropical. Architecture means collective, composite, composite of order. That order was centropy. Do you want the order to go down? We become entropical. If you want the order to go up, it becomes centropical. So architecture means collective, composite order of things. By logical perception, we want it to go up. We don't want it to come down. That's why we call omni-justice. Everything about creator is omnism.
When omni honors synergy, it honors syntropy, it honors sufficiency, it honors vibration.
Yes, because those are his prescription for us to be centropical continuously in the process of healing. And order of the body goes higher and higher and higher. Illness is when the order of the body goes down and down become less. When we have less order, less composite order in very diverse entity of the body, we are ill. Now, if you look at that collectively and globally, that's what global illness or global healing is.
Well, let's go for the global healing, shall we?
Yes, sir.
All right, my brother. Bless you. Thank you so much.
You're
but
welcome.
I want to remind us, we're going for the global healing.
Exactly. Healing for all.
Healing for all.
Yeah.
All right. Until next time.
Okay, bye-bye.
Bye-bye.